Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Daily Muppet. I'm currently your host, Riddy, here with my co-hosts, Mike
Hello.
and Jay Rhodes.
Hello.
We're going to change it up this week. We're going to do, we had the podcast for the longest time, and now we're going to kind of switch things and kind of do more of a YouTube style. I think it's better, if everyone can see our faces, everyone can see, our reactions, and so we're going to kind of do it this way. We think it's a better setup. So hopefully you guys like the new setup and like seeing all of our lovely faces talking about Manchester United. So in today's episode, what we're going to do is we're going to start off by talking a little bit about the Southampton game. A nice result, which obviously was further bolstered by Chelsea's loss to Southampton yesterday, so it looks even better. They managed to get that win. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the end of the transfer window, kind of review it, talk about what we think, how we think each signing was, what we think was good about it, and then any deficiencies that maybe we need to solve in January, and then end with some little details such as Garner, the right back situation, and of course, everyone's favorite topic right now, Ronaldo. So yeah, let's just jump right into it. Southampton, a nice 1-0 win. Definitely a really hard fought match that could have really at a lot of times swung either way. Yeah, I mean, what do you guys think? What was kind of what really stood out to you, Mike, about this game, especially after kind of that Chelsea game yesterday where they did end up losing?
Yeah, well, the big thing, and we've seen it circulating quite a lot, was the big tactical change that Ten Hag made at halftime, where we looked quite lethargic in the first half. Or I don't even know if lethargic's right, or just a bit boring, really, to put it quite bluntly. And we changed it up because they were doing like a man-to-man press, and they completely just stopped us making any midfield or forward progression. It was basically just allowing Varane to try and pass to no one, and obviously Varane's not the best passer. But obviously, Ten Hag started mixing up after half time, started playing a lot more fluid. So the man to man marking from Southampton, they were getting confused and they didn't know what to do. So it obviously worked when Dallo put that great pass in for Bruno for the goal. So I love that specifically. It obviously showed us something Ten Hag can do on the fly. He's not just someone who is a pure system based manager that a lot of people thought he is. That he can make those big tactical changes on the fly. That he can notice, okay, they're playing that way, so I'm going to counter this way, etc. Which is obviously great to see because we haven't really had that loads outside of maybe Mourinho years ago, where he'd just play the way he would until we got a goal and then the floodgates would open. But outside of that, I can't really think of a manager who's been like that for us recently. So I think that was something I like seeing, was that we were able to change the style and change the tactics on the fly like that and still get a decent result of it. Obviously, we've struggled against Southampton in the past. I know we've done well against them as well, but still a good 1-0 win for sure, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. I think you're right too, because there's obviously an adjustment in the game, and what we played the same lineup as versus Liverpool, which obviously was kind of a different game, but clearly Ten Hag was going for some kind of like stability moving forward, and it makes sense, right? I mean, in most sports, we've talked about that on this podcast before, that you kind of ride the hot hand. When you get a good result, you tend to stick with it, and given that it was probably a little too soon for Casemiro, and unfortunately Anthony Martial picked up yet another injury in training between Liverpool and Southampton, it made sense just to kind of stick with the same setup. But it definitely worked, and then he changed it again, right? Kind of after the. I mean, I don't know. Would you say, Mike, that he changed it after the goal to settle in defensively, or was that just the team couldn't kind of keep it going after 65 minutes or so? It seemed like they definitely settled in a bit.
Yeah, I think it was a
Then.
little bit that, and a certain player came on up front. But yeah.
What? There's a
Who could
player
that
that comes
be?
on as a sub that doesn't provide energy.
I'm not sure about that. There might be just a certain
Yeah,
Portuguese player.
yeah, Ronaldo, I think, is for sure. Look, I don't think he's going this window. We're gonna talk about this probably at the end of the episode, but it just really doesn't seem like he's going anywhere this window, which causes a bit of a problem because in reality, when you think about Ronaldo, you think that he would be the perfect super sub. And in reality, what I was saying in that game when we were watching it, that he would be he was almost what I felt like exactly what was needed. We were putting in a lot of crosses, mainly because of the low block, and having someone like Ronaldo who isn't very mobile but is very supposed to be very good in the box, and as obviously can jump incredibly high, would be what we would need to actually put ahead on those crosses. But it just didn't seem. It seemed like when he came in, we were playing almost entirely in our half. I don't know if you guys like. I don't know if you guys have any idea
Oh
of kind of
yeah, for
what
sure.
that
I
whole
mean,
situation was.
because what you're talking about is Ronaldo's a good, potentially a good substitution when we're like chasing a goal, when teams are settled in deep and you're not moving a lot, and he can just kind of poach around the box. Because sure, he can still do that. You're right. I mean, Ronaldo as an aerial threat in the box, he still beats practically everyone in the air. He did it a lot last year in the Champions League, where we'd be chasing a goal right late, and then he wasn't scoring on the counter. He'd be sitting in the box, and then the chance would come in and he would take it. And that is obviously at this stage, in time, not to just bash on Ronaldo endlessly, because he's still very, very good at that. That is why he scored a lot of goals last year. We don't have an aerial threat otherwise, frankly. We really don't. I mean, our center backs. Varane should be okay at it, but now we've put Martinez in instead of Mcguire. Like we have no aerial threats in the box anywhere on the pitch except Ronaldo. We know that Sancho's not a guy who's going to get in there. Rashford has never been good at getting on the end of those through his career. It's not his style. So yeah, it is. He's the only guy who can do that. But it doesn't really make sense him coming on when we're defending a lead, because if he was quicker, which is crazy to say about Ronaldo, but the fact is, if he was quicker, then you probably get 2 more goals versus Southampton after he came on. They were open at the back. They were very open at the back, and unfortunately, it wasn't there for him. I guess, yeah, that is a challenge that we have to face. But do you guys think he can accept that role of being the guy to come on chasing a goal? I mean, do you think it's possible? There's this whole article come out from the Athletic, which we kind of knew, though some people are in denial about this, about the dressing room kind of split being effectively manufactured by Ronaldo, going to Rangnick behind Harry Maguire's back as club captain, and other players. And regardless of what you think about Maguire as a player, it's just not the type of thing that you can do in a dressing room, to just go around to other players and go complain to the manager about them and ask them to be benched and things like that. And there's obviously a bit of a faction in the dressing room here, um, that seems to be all based around Ronaldo's demands for how the team has to play. Can he accept this, and how problematic will it be? I mean, we don't know that much about Ten Hag, but what do we think?
Yeah, Mike, I have a question too. Did you see the play? Kind of. I don't know if you kind of had seen. There was that counterattack when very clearly he had. I think it was Rashford
Yep,
on a
Rashford.
break,
Yeah.
and instead of putting it straight, so Rashford in a one-on-one, he hit it. He hit it right, which people were saying was because he
So
wanted
it could get the
Rashford
pass
to go
back.
right, and
Yeah.
then he. Do you think that's what the case was?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there was that. There was a counter attack when he literally had the one Southampton centre back, Mohamed Salisu, on him, and he got beat for pace, which should not be happening. To well,
Yeah.
it just shows that Ronaldo's just older now, and that's
Hmm.
the unfortunate thing about aging and life and whatnot, really.
Yep.
But he shouldn't be getting beat by a centre back for pace when
Damn.
it's Ronaldo on a counter. Like, we've never seen that. So I think it's kind of getting to that stage of Ronaldo where he has lost a lot of his physicality, or well, at least his athleticism. So it is a bit of a worry going forward in regards that he might just become more of a, you bring him on when we need a goal and you're just going to try and get him in the box. But because you're not going to be able to really counter with him anymore, he just doesn't have that speed anymore, it seems, which is sad to see, because obviously he's had so many great goals, hundreds of goals doing that. So was sad to see, but I think that is kind of showing that he probably just isn't up to the task at United anymore, I'd say.
Yeah, I don't. I'm not surprised that the reports coming out that he's kind of manufactured this split in the dressing room. I think, and I'm honestly also not surprised that he hasn't gotten any offers this window. I mean, I think that people don't really need a 38-year-old reasonably immobile person on their team. You know what this kind of reminds me of, and I do apologize to again our UK audience because I will continue to make basketball references. This reminds me very much of Carmelo Anthony. Mike, you might like this reference a lot. This reminds me a lot of Carmelo Anthony recently when he was very adamant about starting and he had to be sat down and basically talked to and said, your role will be coming off the bench and providing a fire. And he accepted it, and now he's thriving from the bench role. And I think Ronaldo has that in him. Obviously, Carmelo Anthony and Ronaldo are not of the same caliber in terms of like their entire impact on sports and just like whatever. But it kind of reminds me of that situation where like if he can accept it, I think he'll be very valuable, but he has to accept it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that is the concern is can he accept it? Is he capable of accepting, this kind of role because he's going to have to? I mean, it's funny because Mcguire being benched isn't going to change him not playing in these games and all of that. So it's sort of one of those things like he's just going to have to live with the reality of who he is as a player now and get along and he doesn't really have a choice. I mean, like you said, maybe it's hard to say. Would it be humbling to him to have been offered to 18 teams this summer and nobody would come in to buy him, for him to look at it and can he self-reflect on that and say, hang on a second, maybe
of course
I don't
he can. Come on.
No, I'm just saying it's funny because I, for example, just to give an example, I know athletes are how they are and people are how they are. But like, for instance, Zlatan Ibrahimovic has been able to absolutely accept his aging as a player, as one of the most proud people, ever as an athlete, and accept that he is aging, accept that he cannot be the player he was before. He still has ultimate belief in himself, but he has also accepted that he can't do what he used to.
Yeah,
And
fine.
isn't the guy. And Ronaldo's gonna have to at some point. I mean, look, it's not getting any better. He is getting older, and I just come on, he's got to accept
But
it. I mean,
Zlatan isn't also getting like all this anti-aging stuff. Like, did Zlatan allegedly get Botox in his willy? No, because he's not a psychopath. So, like, you may say, "Oh, Zlatan has to accept it."
allegedly not a
I said
psychopath.
allegedly. I said allegedly.
Zlatan might be a bit of a psychopath.
Yeah, he is a psychopath, but he's not done or gone the extent of things that Ronaldo's doing. He is definitely a psychopath for sure. I don't know. I think that unfortunately, Father Time is the greatest equalizer, and as Ronaldo allegedly tries to inject Botox in every inch of his body, it will catch up to him.
You know what? I'm gonna say right now, I honestly don't think that story makes any sense.
I don't agree either. I think it's ridiculous. I think it's ridiculous.
It's one of the silly things.
But it's really funny. It's really funny, even if it's not true. All right, let's talk about the Leicester game for a second, and then we'll talk transfers. Mike, you and I had talked previously about how bad Leicester looked this window. Kind of what's been going on with them? Like they've had one transfer. Kind of why have they got no one in? Why did they look so bad? And how are you feeling about the game?
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? Because, as you said, it was one transfer who is a backup keeper, if not even like a third choice keeper. He's some 32-year-old. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. But he's irrelevant. And obviously they've sold Kasper Schmeichel, who was their number one. And they have just sold, I think it's been confirmed today. I don't know if it's like official confirmed today, but they sold Wesley Fofana to Chelsea.
He wrote a goodbye letter, so I'm pretty sure it's confirmed.
They haven't brought in anyone to replace him. You assume they might in the next few days, but still. They still needed replacements regardless, because they have really been slumping the past 18 months, let's say. Like, obviously had a lot of upset with James Maddison and stuff. Vardy's only getting older. Kelechi Iheanacho probably hasn't replaced him well enough yet, and then they still haven't replaced like the likes of Ben Chilwell and stuff like that. So they are struggling. Obviously, they're bottom of the table right now, 1 point from 4, which is terrible for a team like Leicester, who's normally been in that top 6 hunt with us. And yeah, we should have a good chance against them because they've just not been good enough right now, and it does look like Rodgers' days are very, very numbered, or
It, and
hopefully something.
on top of that, there's kind of rumor out there, and this might be obviously the reason they're not spending, that they are looking to sell up. The owners are looking to sell, and that would explain it a little bit because it's unusual for Leicester to. It's really unusual, right? Since they've returned to the Premier League to let themselves fall into this state of like not buying replacements, not refreshing the squad, all of that. I mean, they've done a really good job of that. They were buying, they just sold Fafana for an enormous amount of money, and it doesn't look like they have a big spend lined up, to replace in the team. And it does seem like there may be some truth in them looking to sell. So yeah, I mean, gosh, it's kind of a team that there's really no excuses at this point for not performing against, considering it's almost like you could almost see a situation of them going down, getting bought, and coming back up for the parachute payment being a
Yeah.
legitimate strategy for a club like theirs at this point in time, financially, which has been done before. I mean, ask Norwich about that. They just pop up and down every year for the extra money. But um, what do you think is the best? I mean, if we did what we did versus Southampton, we probably still win, considering the state of them and how well we're playing. But given that we now do have more options available, most notably Casemiro, what now becomes? Anthony won't be ready yet. What now becomes our best available 11? We're now into midweek games for the next month. Is it time? Do we start rotating now, or stick because we have Arsenal on Sunday? Do we start rotating now with only 2 games before Arsenal, with Arsenal being a much tougher match for where you'd expect to
Hmm.
see Martinez, Varane, the first choice guys now, especially at the back and all of that? Who do you see playing at the moment, for this kind of 11 on a midweek game against a weaker side?
Um, yeah, it's a tough one because the 2 days in between is obviously tough, but I think we're at the stage now where we have a bit of momentum. I could see us going in with maybe, I could see us maybe going in with the same. Maybe we would save Casemiro for Arsenal because he's 30. He could still probably play tomorrow
Well, he hasn't
and
even
then
played.
Sunday.
I think Casemiro could probably play both games because you don't need
Okay,
him
then
to
I would
play.
then I would say probably the only change would be like maybe you'd start Ronaldo. Um, you start Ronaldo tomorrow with maybe Sancho and Rashford, and then on Sunday you do Anthony, Rashford, and Sancho. Um, and then in terms of midfield, I mean, I think against a team like Leicester, who are probably going to sit back, you'd probably want the creativity of Ericsson and Bruno. So instead of like a Fred, like maybe Fred, Casemiro, and Bruno is a better midfield against Arsenal. I don't know, Mike. What do you think? You're a little more tactical than that.
I really hope Ericsson gets a rest because I know
He's
I completely agree with you, really, that
fantastic. Yeah.
yeah, his creativity is obviously great, but he looked dead after about 50 minutes against Southampton, and he looked dead against Liverpool. So
Yep.
no, no heart jokes there, but
That is not a
obviously,
heart joke. He
yeah,
literally
Like,
he just hasn't looked good.
lost
I
it.
mean, he is in his 30s. He's normally covering the most distance for us, and obviously he has had a heart condition. So you don't want to keep playing him loads because obviously he's not going to be the pinnacle of health for a top level football player. He's not like a James Ward-Prowse or someone like that who runs insane amounts every time. He needs rest, and we have that now. I think that's a great thing looking forward to this season is we do have some good rotation options. We're not got a dead bench anymore. Obviously, we're not going to have the full use of it because like Anthony's not going to be available for it. But I think if I was Ten Hag for the Leicester game, I would probably go with the little Brazilian duo of Fred and Casemiro, and then have Bruno because Fred hasn't played loads either. Obviously, he didn't start against I don't think he started the last 2 games, did he? No, he didn't, obviously. And we know what Fred's like. He can cover like that. And then he's obviously got a good partnership with Casemiro already from the national team. And then honestly, I'd maybe try Mcguire out as well because again, Leicester aren't going to have much of the ball, and Mcguire is a much better ball player than Varane. He's obviously not as good as like a true defender, but in regards to with the ball at his feet, he's much better. He's one of the best defenders in the Prem with the ball at his feet. So I think it'll be good to see that, and then maybe bring back Luke Shaw for one of these games as well, because that's the thing now. We can rotate these players. I know, obviously, one might not be as good as the other, but we actually have viable rotation options now. It's not Alex Tellez or Eric Bailly, or I know Alanga still technically has started for us, but obviously he's going to be dropping down the pecking order a bit, and so will McTominay. And we're going to have all these great options now. So I do hope we rotate the likes of Varane and like Varane, Malacia, Ericsson, and then I'd probably just keep the front three as it is. Maybe even start Alanga again. I don't know if he's going to really want to start Ronaldo because he just has been so out of form and just does not look good under Ten Hag. And then obviously on Sunday, you'd assume Anthony's going to start. So maybe try them still. And then maybe Martial might be even back. I don't even know what Martial's looking like going forward.
Apparently, he's out for another week at least.
Another
so
week plus, yeah.
He's going to miss Arsenal. He's going to miss Leicester.
That's great.
Yeah, one of the things.
God damn it!
I know it's incredibly frustrating, right? As like all of us get hope back about Anthony Martial, he lets us down in a different way. Unfortunately, just continuously being injured. But yeah, I think it's very unlikely Varane plays. His minutes are being managed because he had pretty bad run of injuries last year and even in preseason. And Ten Hag talked about that he wasn't even fit in preseason. So I think it's extremely likely that you see rotation at the back. Is Mcguire Martinez the best partnership? Well, based on the first 2 games, no. So I wouldn't even be surprised to see the return of Mcguire, Lindelof, and Shaw in the 3. I know that's a lot of changes.
Lindelof is still injured. I think he's only trained mildly. I don't think it'll be.
Well, then obviously it'll have to be instructions, but of course it might help with Casemiro being in there, and then Fred and Casemiro helping Casemiro get kind of bedded in, being familiar makes the most sense. Give Eriksen rest.
Yeah, I could see Fred.
Let Bruno build on getting his first open play goal in a long time. And then, yeah, you might keep the front 3. You really might. There's 5 subs, and that's the other thing now, too, is we have to keep thinking with that. You can make 5 subs now all season, and we saw that it's easier to make more halftime changes. It's easier to make early game changes and not be so discerning, because I don't even think the halftime change counts as one of the 3 times you can make a change or something like that. But I'm not sure if it does. I have to think about that. But regardless, you can make lots of changes. But yeah, it's a tricky situation. The front 3 is challenging because, of course, at the moment we're short. Martial being injured, Anthony not ready yet. So you'd have to think Anthony will start on Sunday with probably Sancho and Rashford, which is a very good combo for playing against Arsenal because you're going to get space. You're going to get space to run in against Arsenal. And versus Leicester, I don't know. Maybe the work rate of Elanga is still going to be, used there. But it depends on how Ten Hag sees the game. If he thinks Leicester are going to sit back, they've lost Fofana. Which side does Fofana play on? Usually the right or the left? I know they don't have him all season so far, but
I think it varies. I think mostly right though.
Mostly right. So then, you're going to want a bit of, you'd hopefully see Rashford on the left against whoever on our left, their right against whoever the heck they have back there, who's probably not very good. And to try to beat him for pace. But if Ten Hag thinks they're going to sit deep, he'll probably put Ronaldo on there. If Ten Hag thinks, it's going to be more open, he'll probably use Elanga. And, one of the things is as well, I guess that might factor into Ronaldo playing is, especially for rotating out the back, that we're still going to be going long with De Gea right now. And so having somebody who can actually fetch the long balls
Dubravka.
until Dubravka is in, who's not announced yet, we're still going to be going long. And so it might be helpful having Ronaldo in there to field those down, just because we don't have anybody to do that now. And that is a reason we've lost a lot of possession. So I think he might get a game. It is the last day of the transfer window because it's extended to the first. So you have to think that there may be some politics at play as well there. If Ronaldo's not in the squad or something, then obviously you'd consider he's leaving somehow, that there'd be an option. But if he is, I kind of do think he'll play simply because yeah, you're gonna have to make him happy at some point, and I just can't see him playing versus Arsenal. I can't see it. But playing against Leicester and playing against in the Europa League against Real Sociedad, I think is our first game next Thursday. Makes a lot of sense to me. So that's what I would expect. I'm leaning towards Ronaldo being in that front three for the game against Leicester, and then hoping we can pin them back a bit and just play that way because that'll be the best bet.
Yeah, I could see him starting. But let's talk about transfers now, just because I think there's a lot that we've already touched on that might transfer well. So right now, officially, our transfer window has been Malaysia, Martinez, Ericsson, Casemiro, Anthony. An agreement was announced. Apparently, there's some paperwork stuff, but it's not a big deal. And then we all know Dubravka. Nothing announced officially. Probably medical. Is what's taking a second, but he should probably be announced today or tomorrow. So that would leave our entire window as Malaysia, Martinez, Ericsson, Casemiro, Anthony, Dubravka. So just off the get-go, that is way more than I ever thought was going to happen at the beginning of this window. It's almost an insane window. I mean, I think it's a crazy good window. And we can talk about that. Sorry, I'm still a little sick. So the ones that we've seen have played are obviously Malaysia, Martinez, and Ericsson. Casemiro's had 10 minutes against Southampton, where he was. You can't really even tell. And then obviously Anthony Dubravka. Let's start with just how would you guys rate the transfer window, and then we can kind of go through each of the players and kind of talk about them individually, and then finish with some deficiencies and specifics like Garner, etc. So, Mike, how would you rate this transfer window?
So out of 10 or something, I'm probably going to say like an 8, because I know it will be 6 signings if we're including Dubravka in there. Albeit 2 of them have basically been, well, I know Dubravka isn't a free, but basically it's a few million, and Ericsson was obviously a free. Obviously we missed out on a striker, which is still going to be big regardless of bringing in Anthony. I wish we brought in a better goalkeeper. I think it's pretty obvious my thoughts on David De Gea over the years now. But I think we've had some great deals. Obviously, Ericsson for free. I know it isn't technically. We will have paid for him anyway, but it's still a free. Malacia has looked incredible, and he was like 15 million euros or something. Like absolutely nothing for someone like him, who I know it goes without saying, but if he was in like the Spanish or Italian league, he probably would have been triple that, it seems. Lissandro's obviously been great. I don't think you can slate him in the slightest. He's had back-to-back man of the match games and looks really, really good on the ball. He's shown that tenacity and that, can't really think of the right word, but he pisses people off, which is great to have. I'm very excited about Casemiro. I think a lot of people have been doubting it a bit too much, in my opinion, that a lot of people think, well, he's not Frenkie de Jong, but Ten Hag has not had a Frenkie de Jong for 2-3 seasons, I think now. I can't remember. It will have been 2 or 3 seasons, because he's had Edson Alvarez there, who is just a much worse version of Casemiro. He's just a very cheap version of Casemiro. So I think the people worried about that because he did obviously want Frenkie. He can obviously play with a bit more of a destroyer midfielder, as he has at Ajax for the past few years. It's just relies a bit more on the other midfielders, but then they also have a lot more freedom to do whatever they want, like Gravenberch has done for the past couple of years, for example. Anthony, I'm excited about. I know the price is obviously a bit over than what we expected, but firstly, there's just not many left-footed right wingers in the world these days, and I think Man City have got about 5 of them, which is a shame. But outside of that, like, there isn't really many. There isn't. I can't think of any at Real Madrid. Barcelona, there's maybe Ousmane Dembele, who always been quite injury prone, and then Bayern have Leroy Sané, who is obviously from City, and then all the City players, and then there's Salah. So there just isn't many. He's going to be he's a great dribbler. He's great at taking players on, and it's something we've lacked in ages, outside of when Rashford has been in like the form of his life and just beats players for fun. it's good to have someone like that who can help us be a bit more fluid as well, because he can play on the left as well at times. Well, he can swap wings quite often, which is great. And then, Dubravka, he has been great at Newcastle in terms of being a shot stopper. And prior to that, he was a very good sweeper keeper when he was in throughout Europe. I think he was in when he was in Czech Republic and I think Austria. I can't remember the other country, but when he was in other leagues, he was a great sweeper keeper and stuff. He just had to play under Rafa Benitez and Steve Bruce, so he became more of a shot stopper. But he was statistically better than De Gea at shot stop in the past few years. So I think it's been a good window. 8 out of 10 in my opinion. I know we've got 6 players. Well, we'll have 6 players, which is good for us and a lot for us actually. But I think if we had that striker or maybe another right back or a better goalkeeper, I would have put it a 10 out of 10 because I think all these players we've surprisingly got from the Eredivisie have done well, and hopefully they all crack on quite well.
Yeah, I would. I feel good about. I agree with you on the 8 out of 10, and mainly because I think that it was very clear that the team needed reinforcements. But I think in this situation, we didn't just. This feels like let me say this. I understand that people were worried, especially you, James. People were worried that we were buying manager choice players, but this does feel like we chose players that would fit positions instead of just buying players to buy players. So in this situation, I do feel good about the fact that you had Malaysia's looked very impressive. I think the passion he's brought, the willingness to drive. I mean, that play where he pushed as hard as he could and stopped Liverpool from getting a corner after he had messed up. That's the kind of work rate you want. Martinez, I think, has probably been the biggest surprise, but it makes sense when you pay 60 million for a center back. You expect them to be pretty good, and I do think a lot of people after the first 2 games were basically saying, "Oh, he's a midget. Oh, he's so small." That's what happens when you buy a 5'8". James specifically said that's what happens. Maybe a 5'8" center back from the Eredivisie isn't the answer, and now he's looking like, probably one of our best center backs besides Varane. Obviously, everyone's known Eriksen's quality, so that's not really much to talk about. I think another point, Mike, about Antony is it lets Sancho move to the left wing permanently, which he's more efficient at, and with that, you have kind of these 2 tricky wingers, which would just kind of drive fullbacks insane with. So I think that's a good part about him. I'm real, like you said, super excited to watch him play. He's probably the one I'm most excited to watch play, just because we've all seen the TikTok compilations. We've all seen the highlights. He has also a wicked left foot from outside the box. He's had a couple of those really nice long balls from right outside that just curve right in. And then Dubravka will be an interesting one because I'm not sure how long it's going to take or if it will happen at all that Dubravka does push De Gea out, but it'll be interesting to see. And I'm curious. It feels like we have to have done that and bought Dubravka with the intention that he would displace De Gea as number one. What do you think about that situation, Mike, in terms of Dubravka? Do you think he will displace De Gea?
I think it's going to be quite good to watch because obviously the past 4 years he's been in England at Newcastle. He has been a bit more of a shot stopper, but that's kind of expected. He's been at Newcastle where they've been teetering on the relegation line now for years. But like I said, and some Twitter profiles like United Arena and stuff have pointed it out that he did used to be a very good sweeper back in Europe, and even though that was years ago, he won't have forgot, you'd hope. And if he can show that sweeper ability like he used to show, as well as keeping the shot stopping ability, which has been one of the best in the Prem over the past 4 years, then I wouldn't be surprised if he does overtake De Gea, surely because I don't think Ten Hag is too happy that he has to keep playing long with De Gea as he has for the past 2 games. And he knows that De Gea is not good enough with the ball at his feet to initiate plays, not even just drop it off to one of the centre backs, but break that first line to hit the wing backs or the defensive midfielder or something like that, because we obviously saw what happened against Brentford. So I don't know. It's going to be close, and we'll have to see if Dubravka can remember how to be a sweeper. But I think if he does, I think we could see it happening, especially with De Gea's contracts running out at the end of the season. I know we have the optional extension, but still, who knows? Especially with Dean doing well at Forest. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's right. And overall in the window, I think I agree with your assessment on an 8 overall. I mean, the execution of the window was maybe a little bit haphazard at times because it did not go according to plan. I think initially the clear targets were a center back, a deep midfielder, and a striker. And the initial targets being Timber, Frenkie de Jong, Darwin Nunez, and none of them happening, which is fine. It happens that you don't get your first choices. But it was a bit haphazard. And there was a point where after Malaysia, Martinez, and Eriksson, it looked like after De Jong had kind of stalled and fallen through that we're talking about Arnautovic and Rabiot. And I think we'd be having a much different discussion today if it had been Arnautovic and Rabiot.
I can't even believe that that was. I can't even believe that that was an option at one point.
And that was
it
real.
Feels,
I mean, they were close. These deals both
they were real
nearly
close.
happened. And that
Arnautovic would
probably
have
would have been
happened.
the window. Yeah.
Arnautovic would have happened if there wasn't like
Yep.
multiple people. Because you heard that like the reason why it didn't happen was because of the
100%. 100%
because of what,
it
like
didn't
the
happen because
basically
of the
fans
fan
protesting.
Yeah. It was literally because of the backlash to the club. That was the only reason it didn't happen. They were ready to pay more money and all of that. So it was pretty bad. And so that was not a good thing overall. But in the end, you end up with a lot of really good players at the end of the window. And most importantly, very good players, a good balance, young, high potential players, Anthony, Malaysia, Martinez, and then balanced with some very established senior players who play at a high level in Eriksson, Casemiro, and then obviously Dubravka just for some competition and cover at goalkeeper for a sweeper style. But most importantly, I think you're getting from every single player something new that we don't have in the team, which is really allowing us to round out not just a first 11, but even a good rotation team. If you compare the first 11 we've got now and the second 11 that's likely there, the second 11 looks like our first 11 from the last few years. So it's vastly improved. But, in Malaysia, you're getting a bit more of a tenacious left back, especially defensively, someone we have not had. In Martinez, you're getting that left-footed center back who's very aggressive, who can pass through the lines. And that is also something that we have not had. Eriksson, you're getting a bit more of a controlling, creative player who's maybe a bit more disciplined than Bruno. But at the very least, you're getting someone who could probably rotate with Bruno and probably will end up being more rotation with him than starting alongside him just due to age and fitness as things get busy. In Casemiro, obviously, you're getting a defensive midfielder we haven't had in ages and ages. Anthony, like you said, left-footed right winger. We have not had that ever, right? I mean, when's the last time we've had an actual left-footed right winger? And a long, 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 long time. I can't think who the last one would have been. A certain player who cannot be mentioned, but was also not really a winger.
Redacted.
I guess I would say
Redacted
player who was probably more of a striker anyway, or who would have become a striker anyway. But as a right winger who's actually gets involved in build up, is creative, is putting crosses in, we haven't had that touchline winger type of player in a long, long time. And so obviously that profile's new. And then, on top of that, it's just a lot of good profiles that allow the team to be fleshed out. And I think that's the most important thing in general. So I think an 8 is fair, and it really lays out what we need in the future.
Yeah, it's actually really exciting, and I just can't believe I'm about to get it. I know we're supposedly done for the window, and I would bet anything on that there's nothing going to happen. Schrager just said, what is this crap? Schrager said, and by the way, Schrager is an interesting case of a journalist because he's not really a journalist. He's kind of like an ITK. I think in the past, Mike, he's written articles. Like, he used to be a journalist. Like, what is his deal in terms of his journalistic credentials? You don't know? I don't.
Well, he was
he's just
started. He was a part of Stretty basically, and
he was
started.
part of Straight News, and now he's still like, for example, with the Dest situation. Obviously, we're not getting Dest because of AWB. So Wan-Bissaka and Dowell will be. By the way, I will say about Dowell real quick. Some people said he's been mediocre, but I think he's been decently solid. Like, he's probably been especially in the first two games we got whomped. I didn't think he was that bad. And I thought in the last two games, I know he assisted, so obviously that's kind of skews the trend up a little. But I didn't think he's been that bad at all. I've actually been mildly impressed with him. He seems like he's improving. He always was a young player with potential, and if you could kind of use his brain more, I think we always said he'd be a better player. So in this situation, it does seem like he is improving. Schrager did say, what I was saying about the Dest situations, he was in contact with Dest's agent. So he does have these random ass connections. So Schrager said, I still think something may happen for Manchester United before tomorrow night. This is a hunch, of course. Please do not take my words literally. I said may. I get told things off the record, which I'm not authorized to publicize, and things can change at any moment in football. So, we basically heard that, again, full disclosure and full disclaimer, anything can happen in football. We're basically of the impression that most things are probably done. Something crazy could happen. Like, if randomly Frenkie de Jong is like, I want to come, I think we'd make that money available. What do you think?
Probably, but
there's no
why would it be now? Why would it have to be a day before the window?
I don't know. And then Phil yesterday was saying, like, he would put an eye emoji on like a gif of Frenkie.
It's just that time of, it is just that time.
Yeah, but these are like
last
few
days
people
of
with
window. It's like, no, and the thing is, it's not that you don't hear it. It's not that there isn't like potentially any truth into these things. It's more a matter of like why one would hear it and why these things would be happening. And the thing is that when it comes down to it, it is hard to say anything about it, because I do know even why Phil said what he said, and it could be what Schrager's referring to as well. But the likelihood of it is, I think the first domino you would see for that to happen, for things to happen, is for Ronaldo to leave. That would be the first thing. And then it's more likely that what could be being referred to by Schrager could also just simply be Ronaldo leaving and Memphis Depay coming in, because United have been looking for a striker.
I know you don't like that, Mike, but I think Memphis. Okay, is Memphis worse, Mike, than Ronaldo? That's the only question.
But there's many better options, and we shouldn't be going for someone who is just a little bit better.
But he'd be
the problem
free.
The problem is that he would be free. But the problem, which I do understand, which is why I don't think United pursued it yet, is do you have to sign him for 2 or 3 years, and then are you back in a situation once again next summer of you've got Memphis, Martial, Sancho, Antony, Rashford, and you cannot buy a striker on top of that. And that is a concern. I mean, could you take him for a year? Would I take him for a year on loan? Yeah, absolutely. 100%. I'd be quite happy with a move like that. But yeah, it's United, and I worry all the time about blocking future purchases by buying players. Like, look at this situation with striker. We've done this over and over and over and over, and that's why we're in this situation, because we cannot buy a long-term striker. We keep doing 1 to 2 year deals for players and not getting a long-term striker. And so I get it. It's like, it shouldn't have continued beyond the summer. We got a lot of other things fixed finally, which is good. But we really do need a striker, like someone who actually fits the profile of a 9 that
Osimhen next summer
wants.
Ah, look at that, Mike.
Yeah,
Seeing
Pretty
this
glad to
next
see you.
summer.
please, Rich
But then
Russell.
there's also Christopher Nkunku has a release clause next year. Like these are good. These are good options. These are very good options for striker for the next summer, and that's what United should be focused on making one of those two things happen. I think. I mean, those are two options right there, and who's going for a striker next year? That to compete with City got theirs,
Not
Liverpool
Liverpool, not
got
City.
theirs. Barcelona have a dozen.
Tottenham? No, Kane.
Tottenham still have Kane, so
Maybe
unless
like
he
Chelsea.
Bayern Munich and maybe Real Madrid.
yeah, and Bayern
Oh,
aren't
Real
going to be
Madrid,
spending
definitely.
100+ million on the strikers. Bayern are probably the most likely place for Nkunku, unfortunately, because that's just how the Bundesliga
No,
works.
for sure. I think he'll go to Bayern.
You
But
know,
what's his release cost now?
60, 65.
Is it
something like
60?
that.
Oh, that's fine. Bayern will put that. Bayern will pay that.
But he
I
may
mean,
not want to if we're doing well. He is a United fan, actually, at the end of the
oh,
day.
well,
Nkunku is, in
yeah.
fact, a United fan. So,
So
and
is
he's not
Hassan.
German. He's not German. He's French. So, there's always a chance. But that's the thing is that everybody says it's over. United have briefed it was over, and then people started talking about Dest yesterday, and then that didn't really go anywhere. I think it's over. I think it's a 95% chance that it's over
I agree.
at this point in time. And there's, again, it's like if Ronaldo was going to get offers, why didn't it happen earlier? He's been being shopped around since July. If Frenkie de Jong was going to change his mind, why didn't he do it earlier? He's been on the table for 3.5 months now. I mean, look, it's been 3.5 months since middle of May at this point in time. Why would it happen in the last day of the window? Why would that be the case?
Fab just said the exact same thing. And by the way, he said, we're dreaming of Frenkie de Jong, but the only way his situation changes is for him to call his agent at Barcelona and say he wants to leave, which hasn't happened in the last 3 months. It just, why tomorrow would he wake up and be like, you're right.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about January just super quickly. The only thing I could see happening in January is if the right back situation really isn't working, I could see us loaning out or selling AWB and then loaning Dest, because I don't think Dest's situation is changing at Barcelona. Apparently, it's been made very clear to him that he's not really wanted. He doesn't fit tactically. That's the only thing I could see happening, unless he does get the loan to, I think it was Valencia. Was that it? Was it Valencia or Sevilla? Anyone? Whatever. Mike, do you see anything else maybe happening? I don't think strikers really happen a lot in January, but what do you think about January?
Yeah, obviously right back's a big one. I don't think striker won't do. And obviously a big thing in January will be the future of De Gea if it hasn't already been solved, in which are we gonna do the option for an extra year, or are we gonna let him go? Or are we gonna sign a new contract? Like, who knows? Because this time last year they probably would have been getting a new contract signed, and now after looking very shaky, who knows? And I don't think United are going to really want to give him that extra year option when he's on 375k a week and he's playing completely different to how Ten Hag wants to play. So I think that'll be a thing we'll see in January. Not like we'll do a transfer, but I assume we'll start getting linked to more goalkeepers if Ten Hag doesn't want Henderson back or someone like that. So I think that'll be a big thing.
Someone did say Henderson would be, like, we're expecting him back.
Yeah. Obviously, like, he will be coming back, and I think his contract runs till 2025. I think off the top of my head, if not, sorry, but I know he's got a few years left. And then, I mean, who knows? He might want to just get rid of him when he comes back, like after that interview and stuff. Who knows? Like, I'm just speculating, but might want to get rid of him, and then we start getting linked to goalkeepers in January, ready for summer. I don't think we'll really do anything big in January. It's not like that summer when we then got Bruno in January, where we've missed out on someone and then we go in for them in Jan, especially with the amount of money we've spent. So I think maybe right back, and then you'll probably just get a lot more speculation going into summer for like goalkeeper, striker, probably another midfielder. But I think it'll be quite quiet January, to be fair, even if it is after a World Cup.
Yeah, I think you'll probably hear the most about striker. Simple reason being, you have Henderson on loan, you have Ethan Laird on loan at right back, who's already kind of doing quite well for QPR again. Had a good loan until the second half of his loan. I know he's doing well. You still have Wan-Bissaka there. You still have Brendan Williams there. I've suspected some based on information, some just suspecting that the reason they're not pursuing a right back like Dest right now, why it's not so urgent, is because they expect Ethan Laird back next year, which makes sense. I mean, it just does. He's a good player. He's been thought of as probably the best talent in the academy for a long time now, better than a lot of the players we've seen and talked about. Simply, had some bad luck with injuries, but his fitness has improved recently. And sometimes young players just do have injuries. So I think with Henderson and Laird out there, those are likely almost like next summer's signings for those positions. I think that's why you won't see that much. Is everyone's going to want to wait and see how their full loans go and how they do, and then they could come right into the team next year. There's no reason not to. So striker's the only place we don't have anybody. We don't have any options. We have a 37-year-old and an injured player who just cannot get healthy, with Rashford being the main person that everyone's relying on. So I do think striker could be the play in January. Some of the things that obviously, I don't know that they'll buy in January, but starting to really build up the look in towards summer seems likely. And the only way you get something in January is if a player becomes available because their club gets knocked out of Europe and they're desperate for money and things like that. But you got to be careful too, because a lot of times the prices go nutty in January off the back of a World Cup. Someone has a good performance and you get all these rumors and things. So but I think strikers got to be way top of the list for the next two windows, and that's where all the focus is going to be on, because it's probably the only position on the entire pitch right now you could say we don't have two choices to play at the moment, and we don't have anyone on loan, and we don't have any options there.
Yeah, in the academy too. There's not, Charlie
nobody's
McNeil, for
even
example.
close. They're 2-3 years away in the academy minimum, and they're going to
What
need
happened to
loans.
Hugel?
I think he had an
Like,
injury for a
what
while.
happened to your favorite guy?
He
Just
was
still
injured
playing
for
in
a
the
while.
23s and stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Jesus, I don't know.
But he's gonna be a while. The guy's built like Peter Crouch. He's gonna need to put on
Just
some
tall
weight,
and lanky.
he's gonna need to get a loan and all of that. It's just a fact.
How old is
Strikers
he now?
20,
He
maybe
is
19.
18.
18.
He turns
Okay.
19
Oh,
in
yeah,
like
yeah.
November.
Oh,
Him and
yeah,
McNeil
so-
will both be 19, I think, like October, November time.
They're not going to be
I think-
ready. Strikers till 22 is not unusual for them to actually be ready to step into the first team. I mean,
I guess
gonna take a
Redacted
while.
was the only one who kind of propelled himself to
and even
the forefront
him,
then.
he 2 years on the wing before he started actually
True.
to like even slightly work his way into the center. It's going to be a while. So striker's the only thing I can see being possible in the
I wouldn't be surprised if we I'm surprised we haven't loaned McNeil out. I mean, he's
I
obviously
think next year.
he's probably our best attacking.
He's still only 18. Like I know he
Yeah.
turns 19 in literally 2 weeks, but
Next
it's
year.
still quite young, to do a loans. They normally try and wait till about 19, 20.
We
Could you
finally got
see-
Hannibal out on loan though, which
Yeah.
is nice. I mean,
Yeah, that's good.
desperately needed first team football.
I know. I know Iqbal and him kind of are our best midfield options. It's surprising that we loaned out Hannibal, decided to keep Zidane, whatever. Just what I can't pronounce, whatever. I'm gonna say Iqbal. decided to keep Iqbal for cup football as opposed to a Hannibal type situation. I guess Hannibal probably needed more minutes anyway. What about if, for example, Frenkie de Jong has a absolutely miserable time at Barcelona. Xavi insists on playing him as a center back, which is ridiculous. And then he's miserable, and he has like a whatever World Cup, but he's not very happy. Do you see a situation where maybe in January he's like, I'm miserable, get me out of here, and then maybe we'll go in for him then?
Maybe, but I guess the thing that why I don't totally see it. United have a lot of midfielders right now. I mean, we can look at the whole team and say they have Bruno, Eriksson, Scott, Fred, Casemiro. Iqbal is set to stay around
Donny.
the first team. And we still have Donny, who's now an afterthought.
I forgot about Donny.
Like, holy crap, man. I think that they're going to have to move. Honestly, I don't know. I think the midfield is going to be a lot better now with Casemiro than people think. I just don't see it. I don't see it. To me, I really don't see it being something. I know people really wanted, and because of the obviously the connection and all of that, but it also, I will say, to me, doesn't totally make sense with Casemiro. I know people will think it does and say it does, but it doesn't to me, because Frenkie de Jong, the midfield that Ten Hag built around Frenkie de Jong did not have a Casemiro with it too, not in the same way. And I don't know. It sounds bad. It sounds off, but I don't know that it would be as functional as people think it would be. Having Casemiro and Frenkie de Jong with like Bruno or something like that. It sounds really good in terms of the quality of players, but there's just something that doesn't add up to me about it. How it would play out off, especially off ball and out of possession. I don't think it does enough I don't think it's balanced. I don't think it does enough to do it. I mean, when you take City, when they have like Rodri, Gundogan and De Bruyne, it has an immense amount of out of possession work and off ball work, and that is lacking from that kind of midfield. You do want someone in De Jong's position when you have a Casemiro who's going to be moving a lot more, who's going to be pressing a lot more, who's going to be winning the ball back more. You want a solid, more like all-rounder type player. So I don't know. It's confusing. And then who's getting the ball at the back? Is it Casemiro or is it Frenkie de Jong? Because that's Frenkie de Jong's greatest strength, but Casemiro's better in that position too. And I don't know. It's a bit odd. I understand that there's a midfield like Casemiro, Modric, and Kroos, but Bruno doesn't match any of those profiles at all. And Frenkie de Jong isn't really Toni Kroos either. So it really doesn't quite make sense. Pogba makes more sense in that three, but he doesn't exist anymore at United. So and we won't talk about some of the things that are going on with Paul Pogba in the media today, but that's my thoughts on it. It doesn't totally make sense to me.
Oh, yeah, I completely agree. I don't think Frankie would be a great fit next to Casemiro. I think when you've got someone like Casemiro, you need someone, and the City example is the best one. When you see Gundogan play next to Rodri, you see Gundogan constantly getting in the box, scoring, getting assists and stuff. And these days, if you do have a destroyer midfielder, you do need two midfielders who can be very creative going into the middle to final third, where Frankie's best attributes have always been in the defensive third to like progressing into the middle third. You need someone to progress from the middle to the final third. Yeah, he's not. People might compare him to Toni Kroos, but they're so different. Outside of them being good passers, but Kroos has always been great with his long shots. He's one of the best passers I've ever seen. Yeah, I wouldn't really want to spend that amount on Frankie right now. I think with Casemiro now, I think that's kind of solved. I know, but it's like I said before as well when I was talking about Casemiro. Like he's had players like him. Well, obviously with Edson Alvarez, and you just need to try and replicate what he had there because he had Edson Alvarez, Ryan Gravenberch, and Berghaus.
Which are
You can
more
get much better
attacking
versions. Yeah,
players, right? It's
yeah,
not like
yeah.
another deep midfielder. These are
No,
attacking players.
it's basically like a box to box and like a 10 to an extent. So I think that's what we should be doing. I think we could do with another one of those midfielders going forward, just because we do rely on Ericsson so much at the moment, and we shouldn't be. But Fred will get more time, and then we probably just do need another player. I don't think Donny van de Beek is probably the best fit, as we all completely forgot about him. So hopefully that can be solved in the future. But yeah, I'd agree. I don't think it's too paramount of a problem for sure.
Yeah, it's. I kind of see what you're saying, and when you just think about it in terms of like your gut instinct, it does feel like Fred is and obviously it's so stupid because they play together for the Brazilian national team. But Fred is such a good fit next to him, and that's obviously been clear on the Brazilian team. And I think that a midfield of Fred, Casemiro, and Bruno is very balanced. Fred puts in, and it also pushes Fred into what we've been saying for years, which is his preferred position. And that's something that makes you two, I'm sure, very happy and excited because you actually see the proper Fred that was meant to be seen all along. Why Pep wanted to sign him?
Well,
Why we
I
tried to
don't
sign
see
him.
why people are so quick to ignore the fact that, or write off the fact that just because United was bad last year, Fred was one of the best midfielders in the Premier League last
Oh, he
year.
was the best
He
midfielder
was
for us, hands down.
fantastic.
And
I
it
mean,
wasn't
he
even close.
was in his position. He was probably top three last year. What he contributed actually contributing in terms of goals and assists, but just in all aspects of his game. I mean, that Tottenham game was one of the best performances we've seen by a
Yeah,
midfielder at United. Even though Ronaldo ended up with the hat trick, Fred literally ran the entire game from start to finish in the role that he had, and I think what that was with Matic at the base, right, that game, and that is what we can have with Casemiro, where he can be in that role, pressing high, winning it high, moving the ball quickly into transition into the final third, and it's going to be excellent. And I know people are quick to write it off, but it's like Fred deep as a 6 is not Fred in an 8 pressing high role. He literally is an entirely different player, and I think you'll
yeah.
be very impressed with that. I mean, Brazil have been really good with Casemiro and Fred together for a reason.
I got an interesting little tidbit from Laurie Whitwell right now, which is that Dubravka has an obligation if he plays a certain percentage of Premier League games. So that's an interesting thing. Yeah. Besides that, I completely agree on. I completely agree on all the stuff with Fred. So yeah. Sorry about that main call. Yeah, I feel pretty good about it. Anyone got any other closing remarks?
I think that about covers it. James Garner being sold, as we know, with a buyback
True.
and a sell-on clause.
I could see us buying him back in 2 or 3 years. That's good
Well,
that
that's
we
the
considered
thing. If
that.
he develops into that great box-to-box player, then it's a ready-made option. And if he doesn't, then there's no loss there. But in a year, a couple years, when Fred and Scott are maybe being transitioned out as Fred is getting older, or Ericsson isn't around anymore in a couple of years, then you could look to buy him back at that point in time. And if he's good enough to fit in that role, but he has to get on with his career. I know people are saying, well, why not just loan? But think for a moment that maybe James Garner doesn't want to go on loan again. I think that was stated some time ago. Young players don't want to be loaned endlessly without being able to be in control of their careers. And I think that's where it's at for him. So it kind of makes sense in that respect.
Yeah, I agree. I agree on the Garner situation. I'm one who's been very high on Garner, based off of absolutely nothing but gut feeling, and maybe watching him a couple times when he was on loan, and seeing all the highlights. I thought he was great when he played for Nottingham, when he played for Forest in the Championship. I think he'll excel at Everton, a team that's looking not super great, might go down, etc. Basically went down last year, if not for like a miracle. So I could see us buying him back in a couple of years. Fred gets he kind of reminds me of Fred a little bit. Nice, someone who people thought was a 6 is actually a nice box to box. I could see Fred's getting a little up there. We have a player who is primarily proven with a buyback clause. I could see us buying him back. That is absolutely a situation I could see happening, and I kind of hope it does, because I do think he has the potential to make it, but it's probably frustrating for him because I bet he feel like he's proved himself, and maybe if Casemiro hadn't come, he might have had the chance. But if there is a buyback clause, as Fab has said, it's not a bad situation for us at all. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with the window. We all seem like we're happy with the window. Looking forward to Leicester tomorrow, and then Arsenal on Sunday, and look forward to having discussing with you guys next week. Yeah, thanks everyone for coming on. James, if you want to kind of give a little outro, and then we'll say goodbye.
Yeah, as always, thank you everybody for watching. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn notifications on, and we'll see you in the next daily video, weekly video, all of that. And
Smash that like
you've
button.
enjoyed. Yeah.
Follow
Thanks.
Mike and I on Twitter.
Yeah, follow Mike Parrott on Twitter, Reading Muppetiers, and then obviously the main account if you aren't already. And we'll see you
Mike,
later.
what do you got? What do you got? You got anything you want to say? Anything going on?
No, it's just great to be back on, guys. I'll see you next time.
Yeah, good to be back. All right. See you guys next time. Bye.